Hello and welcome to this custom bass build video. This is the dive bar bass. It's a bit of a Partscaster bass. I'm going to walk through the build process and do a rundown here of what all I've got going on with this bass. So just the backstory, what got this whole thing started was I upgraded the pickups on my gigging jazz bass, and I upgraded the pots as well. So I had extra pots, had a set of pickups, I already had a bridge, had some tuners, had end pins. So I had the makings of a Partscaster bass on my hands. All I would need was a neck and a body. So I bought the neck, $75 on Amazon. Actually turned out to be a pretty nice neck, all things considered. And then built the body, and then, you know, bought a couple knob covers, one with these chicken knobs or something different. Bought this double J pickup cover. I'll explain the pickups here in a second. But yeah, a piece of reclaimed pine that was in the loft of my shed for who knows how many years before I moved in. It was actually like a side rail for an old wooden bed frame. Used it, made a two-piece body. So some old knotty pine. The pickups, I ended up taking the two jazz bass pickups, wiring them in series, and creating a single split coil pickup. So similar to a P bass in that regard. So just one volume and tone. And I mean, for the most part, that's really the features. Any other notes? I went with a maple fretboard because my jazz bass has rosewood, so I wanted something a little bit different in that regard. And this is actually the second finish. This is a TV yellow. I'd bought a can from StewMac a while back for another project, didn't use it. Originally there was a dark finish on the wood that I was gonna try to keep some of it and like have it bleed through the yellow and try to create a feature. I didn't like the way it started off. I chickened out, I sanded it down, I stained it dark brownish red, put a clear coat on, and posted a video of the build and thought it was good. But the more I thought about it, the more I didn't like it and I wanted to redo it. So I went back, refinished it in the TV yellow as I had originally planned. And I'm glad I did because it was looking a little too DIY. Now it looks like an actual instrument and not like a piece of furniture, so that's great. So I'm going to walk you through the process here with some pictures that I took along the way, and then when I finish up there, we'll get a little taste of what it sounds like.
Okay, so just going through the pictures that I took along the way here. Starting from the very beginning, just the simple sketch out of the body and what that was going to look like. Like I said, I traced that bottom off of a Squire Telecaster body that I have, and then just kind of upscaled the body length to that of like a Jaguar bass, and then you can kind of see with the grid lines I offset the hips. And this is how the wood started off that I used for the body. It's a piece of reclaimed pine. Like I said, it was the side rail of like an old wooden bed frame. And here it is cut into two pieces that I'm going to glue together. Just a simple butt joint. You can see the knots in the wood. Ideally, for an instrument, you wouldn't have knots, but this one does. Here it is glued and clamped. So here's a close-up of the neck. Like I said, $75 neck from Amazon or eBay or wherever. It's all the same seller. Wasn't really sure what I was going to get when I opened the box, but good straight neck, nice smooth frets. Really no complaints. Probably came from the same factory as a lot of knockoff Fender stuff, or maybe even the Squire stuff. I don't know. And here's the sketch laying on top of the plank. And there it is, traced out, ready to cut. So I cut the bigger chunks off with a circular saw, and then cut out the shape using a jigsaw with a scrolling blade for jigsaw. So it's a little bit narrower, can handle the curves a little bit better. A professional would have a bandsaw or a scroll saw, or, you know, I took my time and came out all right. The thing I liked the way that the grain ended up lining up on the joint. That was not planned, but kind of a cool little book match there. And here it is sanded down. So the original concept, I was going to do it in TV yellow because I had a can of that, and I didn't want to have a pick guard. So with the maple fretboard, yellow body, it was going to be a lot of yellow. So the idea was to let this dark finish from the old pieces of wood shine through and kind of create a feature. It turned out a little different. Here's where I practiced routing my neck cavity and then getting ready to do that on the body. And there it is routed. And there's where the neck fits. I did not get this neck cavity perfectly straight with the center seam. I think the bridge ended up being like an 1/8 inch offset. Really not that bad, but and everything lines up, you know, relative to it. But yeah, just not quite as straight as it could have been. Here I'm getting ready to route the pickup, and on the back for the electronics, I just used like I think it was 1.5 or a 1 3/4 paddle bit. It's kind of crude, but it works. So routed and holes drilled and ready to start finishing. You can see where I left some of that dark finish that was on the wood. The goal was to try to let that bleed through and kind of be a feature. So here I got the first coat of the yellow. I just did like a light thin coat to try to let that dark bleed through, and I just didn't care for the way it looked. I thought it looked like the base maybe had some liver problems, and I didn't want the jaundice base, so I chickened out, sanded it down, and ended up doing this dark brownish red stain that you see here as I get ready to set the bridge. So setting the bridge, basically made a straight edge off of the side of the neck on each side to give myself some guidelines, and then lined up the saddles at 34 inches for the 34-inch scale. The saddles were like 3/4, 2/3 of the way adjusted, so that gives you some room for intonation. Later on, I found I needed a little more room to get it intonated exactly the way I wanted, so I was going to have to move that bridge back a little bit, which ended up being kind of the catalyst for the refinishing. So here's a look at the pickup, all assembled and put together. So like I said, this is 2 jazz bass pickups. The neck one was just a stock on my Mexican jazz bass, and the other one was a Fender custom shop. But yeah, I just wired them in series, tucked the wires into the casing, and then used some hot glue to hold it all in place. But yeah, it worked out pretty good. And this is just the tone pot that came out of my jazz bass. That's where I drilled my hole. There's the other end. And then drilled a hole under the bridge for the bridge grounding wire. There's the electronics all hooked together and tested for continuity. We are good. To cover up the electronics, I had some material for like a stick-on pick guard. So I just cut out the shape, had some small screws, covered it up. Looks nice. There's the chicken knobs on there. I don't know why, but I decided that that's what I wanted. Looks all right. And there is the body with all of the components on it. Here is the headstock, getting ready to get the machine heads on there, on and installed. I did have to sand out these holes a little bit, just a little too tight, not hard. Just used my finger and some 80 grit sandpaper and it opened them up. So here's the biggest mistake I made. Like 2x12 pine is going to be narrower than a normal plank for instrument. Usually those things are like 1 5/8, I think. Like your neck cavity is like 5/8 deep, and then there's like another inch of body behind the neck. Obviously this is only going to be like 1.5 inches thick, which I knew was going to be a little thinner anyway. I measured wrong, and I ended up with 5/8 of an inch of body behind my neck cavity, and my neck cavity was too deep. What I did was I added this little shim here and added like 3/16 of an inch, got the neck cavity where it needed to be, and gave me, you know, like 3/4 of an inch back here. It got the neck set where it needed to be, and it was actually probably better off because this gave a nice flush neck cavity compared to the kind of rough router job that I did. So really worked out in the end, and nobody's really going to look that close. You know, it's a personal project anyway. Here I was putting strings on and realized I needed to put a string tree on here for the D and the G, just not enough downward angle, which is typical. My jazz bass has a string tree. So, but I basically used a bolt and a fender washer and fashioned my own string tree. It works. I could have ordered one, but this was effective. And there's the look at what was the finished product. Like I said, as I did the intonation, I had it really close, but I just didn't quite have enough room on the E string to get it where I wanted it. So I needed to move the bridge back about 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch or so. Once I had that off and, you know, the strings off and everything, that was when I decided that the time was right to refinish it. I just didn't care for the way it kind of looked a little bit too DIY, so I took the sander to that. This is the TV yellow that I got through StuMac. You can see where I re-drilled the holes for the bridge. There are some blemishes in the finish. I'm not sure if it was, you know, something with the wood itself or the previous finish causing some problems. So there's a few blemishes, but I actually kind of like it. It's a little bit of scarring that kind of adds a cool effect, almost a relic type of effect. I don't know, I definitely like the way it turned out in the end. And a side-by-side of the original finish and the new finish. And a little flyover here of the final product. And from here we will do a little sampling of what it sounds like to play.
So that is the dive bar bass in all of its glory. Don't know what my next project will be. I also just recently replaced a neck on a 1967 Framus Caravelle 5117T. I got that video posted as well. So if you want to check that out if you haven't already. But that's been my guitar work lately. We'll see what I come up with next. Thanks for watching.